Hello once again. We continue the show, and this is actually brilliant, right? Because we actually have somebody who watches the show. I'm not so sure whether she takes us seriously or not,
She shouldn't.
but you shouldn't.
We're
but
just having a drink.
how does it feel to now be on the other side of the screen?
Yeah, it does feel really great because when I'm watching the show and getting all the different perspectives you guys are sharing and the conversations that you have, I'm quite intrigued being on the other end. But today, being on the show, actually, I'm actually quite thrilled.
That's fantastic.
fantastic, yeah.
Our viewers often complain that we don't get enough female guests. And it's not because we are misogynistic. We invite females all the time. But most of you are shy about being on the show. So we're really thrilled to have you.
Yeah.
And for,
And maybe you can just start off by actually introducing yourself. We know you are going to have a very important position tonight. And let me not take that away from you. And you can actually introduce to our audience your name and a bit of background about who you are.
Okay. Thanks, Tinashe. So I'm Josephine Takundwa. I'm the incoming Deputy President for the ZNCC. In my personal space, I'm in agribusiness, and I'm also working in the electrical engineering space, focusing mainly on power protection solutions. I also sit on the board for Zimtrade. I also sit on the board for National Building Society, and I'm also newly appointed as board chairperson for a microfinance called Lenders Park,
oh, fantastic.
a subsidiary of NBS.
Okay, great.
These are very powerful positions, and a testimony of just how brilliant you are as a person. Have you ever felt that you are in these positions because you're a woman, or it's because actually you've got the right credentials to be in these positions?
Definitely, I'm not here because I'm a woman. Definitely not. I believe it's due to merit and capability, because I do have a very strong history in the male-dominated industry, in the electrical engineering space. I've been there for 23 years now in that space, and I've earned my accolades within that space. Joining the ZNCC, I came in first as chairperson of Harare branch. I moved on. I was elected as vice president for Mashonaland region. Thereafter, I took a short break for a year, bouncing back as the deputy president of the chamber.
Well done. So why is it we are not seeing a lot more women in positions of authority?
That's a question.
Because you've managed to succeed without the barrier of you being a woman being a handicap. You've managed to make it. So why is it we're not seeing a lot more women actually rise up?
Yeah, this is a question which comes up
All the time.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, it comes up all the time. And it's really not an issue of that women are not capable. We are capable, we are out there. But I think we don't get access to the opportunities. The patriarchal element of thinking, that's very much still there. In industry, in all spaces. So I feel it suppresses women capabilities.
So today's sessions, we had two women who actually raised a point of order, where they clearly stated that the program and people who were presenting, as well as the panels, it was seriously male-dominated. And two panelists actually made a point of order. Now, my question to you is not the easy one.
Yep.
It's now that you're going to be a deputy president, are we going to see things change within ZSCC?
They definitely should. They should, because
Are you a believer in the DEI agenda, the diversity?
No.
inclusion?
Before we get into that, just we want to know how you're going to change, as far as ZNCC is concerned.
okay. First and foremost, it's obviously lonely for me up there, because I'm like the only elected female executive in the chamber. I have to bring my own up to join me in the chamber. So
What's your strategy? How are you going to go about it? Is it a question of just raising the issues, or looking for competent women and encouraging them to actually say, you know what, there are no barriers, but you guys are just not showing up, and you need to show up more?
Absolutely. There actually has been a lot of interest from professional and capable women in getting involved in the matters of the chamber. So my strategy would be probably to approach these women and, get them to get interested in the different aspects of the chamber. We have about 5 subcommittees within the chamber. We also have a women's desk, which takes care of the women's affairs. So I'll start off by getting them involved in the activities of the chamber, such that they can also then rise within the ranks in the same way that I did.
Okay, fantastic. So you can go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to be a bit cantankerous and just talk about the DEI.
That tells them that you've had one too many.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
but yeah, look, I think for the most part the world is a progressive place, and you're an example of that. You've managed to demonstrate merit and go up through the ranks, and I think what you've mentioned as your strategy is probably the most sensible thing to do, is to just find competent women and encourage them. Because sometimes I think there's a perception that there's a glass ceiling, and it's just a mental block that prevents people from.
Yeah. Well, one of the panelists actually said something that I thought was very interesting, and I'm going to repeat it. I'm not going to say who said it, but I think you remember. And I'm going to say it again on the show, because I think it's something that we also
So clearly
face.
you weren't working with Chatham House rules. Well, we were streaming so it's okay.
Yeah. I think they can go to the stream, and they will.
If they're really curious about who said what. Yeah.
But this is what they said, and it was a woman.
Yeah.
And I think Chris had raised the point that the problem is we invite a lot of women, but they turn us down.
Mm-hmm.
So the woman panelist then said, you know what, if you're a woman and you're invited to places like this, and you decline, shame on you. Right? You remember that?
I heard that.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember.
Do you subscribe to that shaming? And I'm not saying anything about the panelists. I'm just saying,
Okay, well,
I found that's very interesting, because we invite a lot of women and they decline. Every time we invite a man on the show on Friday Drinks, they're like, yeah, sure.
So some men are shy, but for the most part we don't have a challenge.
We don't have a challenge. But if you invite a woman, then it's like, nah, maybe not. And I thought it was just for Friday Drinks because we're at a bar.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's also the same at ZNCC.
Well, Tinashe, I would think that probably women could respond in that way because they're less exposed. They're less exposed to these platforms, just generally. Because looking at the statistics, the women in leadership roles compared to the men in leadership roles, men are generally more exposed compared to women. So if you get that kind of response, a woman declining to come and speak at an event or do a presentation, I would think we go back to the space of inequality.
Okay.
Yes.
That's where it's coming from. Okay.
Yes, that's what
So
I
I wouldn't shame, I wouldn't judge. I think the challenge with the diversity movement, in my opinion, right, is for sure historically we had all kinds of discrimination, whether it was racially based, whether it was gender based, and it legitimately held people back. And I think certainly since the turn of the millennium, there are no explicit rules and regulations or laws in most parts of the world that actually hold back. Yeah, that hold you back on the basis of race or gender or these other things. But the disparities are still there, right? So if you look at something, whatever, whether it's in Zim, the top companies, who the CEOs are, what their gender is, what their race is, there's certain biases, there's certain concentrations of certain types of people. And then the challenge, I think, that is there is in the analysis of the reason for such disparity, right?
Yeah.
So people assume, there's less women on this board. It means the board is discriminating against women, right? That might not necessarily be the case, right? It might just be the case that in that particular sector or space,
true.
They're less women.
They're just less women, or the women who were approached were not interested for whatever reason, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that the board is deliberately holding back women. And I think that's the challenge, where we interpret every disparity as a sign of discrimination, instead of accepting that there might be other perfectly benign reasons why those disparities are there.
Good point.
No, let me respond to that, Rufaro. There are some boards who I would say discriminate. I'll give you an example of some boards. Colleagues have also shared with me. You're in a boardroom, and in that boardroom there are 2 females, and tea is being served. And who's called upon to serve the tea?
The female directors.
So what does that speak to?
Well, it's just.
I know the term.
Yeah.
Unconscious bias.
Yeah, that's
Right?
what it is.
That's what they call it, right?
Yeah, but also, I mean, if let's be honest, if you're a guy and you have the option of being served tea by Tinashe, or a woman,
No. I think don't go down that road. I thought what you were going to argue is it could also be a very benign reason, which is usually it's the youngest, because that's also discriminatory, right?
Yes.
Because if I am young, I also face that, right? If you're in a boardroom and you're the youngest, then everybody just looks at you that you're gonna serve the tea. So it's not because of gender; it's just that there are these constructs.
I strongly disagree.
So I think that's our cue to segue away from women issues, and otherwise we get ourselves into trouble. Yeah. And let's actually talk about ZNCC. What can we look forward to next year and the year after that? What do you have in store for us?
So during this past year, the Chamber signed a number of MOUs. We signed MOUs with Belarus, Russia, South Korea. So we are looking forward to following up on actioning on those MOUs. We're probably bringing in delegations from those countries to Zimbabwe and reciprocating, taking delegations from Zimbabwe also to those countries. So those are some of the key drives that we will have as the incoming.
And your members are the ones who are going to benefit from these MOUs.
Absolutely. Our members, and also just Zimbabwean industry at large, because the Chamber, whilst it's a membership organization, we do represent the entirety of business in Zimbabwe.
So how does one actually become a member? Maybe this is a perfect time for you to sell the NCC.
Yes. It's quite easy, actually. We have a number of categories for membership, starting from platinum all the way down to gold. And they also range in terms of affordability in the membership fees. And those who haven't joined need to know that they're losing out, actually, because the Chamber also does represent individual interests. If, as a business, you bring your issue and you need to have that issue taken up to certain offices, that is something that you can actually do. As a Chamber, we represent the interests of all.
So you're a
members.
lobby group. You do a lot of advocacy.
We do a lot of advocacy, yes. We input into policy formulation. We constantly engage with the government. So we are very relevant. And
from your experience over the last 5 years engaging with government, do you find a willing partner on the other side of the table when you interact with them? What's the trend? Have they become more open and more amenable to working with business, or less so?
I believe they are becoming more amenable. I've had opportunity to attend quite a few of the parliamentary portfolio committees where we brief parliamentary committees on progress in industry, and they also then question us on what we are doing. And we find that the dialogue is both ways is healthy dialogue, and we do come up with resolutions from those discussions. We feel we are getting the ear that we are looking for.
Oh, that's encouraging. That's very encouraging. Okay. Yeah, I think this has been a wonderful conference. We're looking forward to tonight. I think that's when the ceremony. That's when the ceremony happens, and the awards as well.
Yes.
Lots of people are winning awards, and we look forward to next year. We'll definitely be in Victoria Falls.
Great.
Yeah.
And hopefully you'll be drinking something more interesting than a Malawi. Because apparently you're not a teetotaler.
Later tonight I'll be drinking something more interesting.
Thank you very much for joining us, and this was wonderful. And yeah, see you next year. Cheers.
Feel the joy from within with the new natural joy juice drink. Passion coconut, apple coconut, and lychee coconut exotic flavors. Available in 1 liter and 250ml packs at a store near you. Natural joy juice drink. Joy in every sip.
My good friend Chris, the CEO of ZNCC, the man who made this wonderful conference happen in this beautiful resort town of Victoria Falls, and he's the reason why we are here as his media partners. So thank you so much for having us.
Pleasure, man.
It was you put on a great show. I think we had really interesting conversations. People were candid, were very open.
Had an open conversation spaces.
So it's a fantastic thing. I think what's left is the final dinner and
maybe just having fun tomorrow, networking,
yes,
boat cruise, sightseeing, all those things.
Looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. So as you know, I think, in my imagination anyway, when I think about the role of the ZNCC, it's to lobby and advocate, for our interests in the business community, for which we're quite grateful. How do you think that's going? You've been doing this for several years now. And, I think yesterday, you were actually able to have 2 ministers here. You engage government on an ongoing basis. What's your sense in terms of the relationship between business and government over the last 5 years? My perception from where I sit is that there's been a lot of mistrust, that the engagement has not been great. But what's the trend from a guy who does this full time? What's?
Yeah, well, I mean, looking at the 5 years up to date, it's not necessarily a smooth sail because private sector, we've got a clear agenda to maximize profit, and our approach is completely liberal in the way we try to tackle policy issues.
Absolutely.
Then you look at the government itself. Before it looks at business, possibly to look at the populace, the voters, and all everything.
Sure.
We always joke and say private sector will maximize profits, while its government is maximizing votes.
Yes.
So in trying to balance
the two,
this whole delicate act, it can be a walk in the park. By the experience, we had seen a bit of warming up from government regarding how they take our submissions. And we had accepted that, obviously, government will not necessarily take everything which we present to them. What's more important, and which we had deliberately done at the Chamber of Commerce, is to take a deliberate, informative, smart approach to lobbying and advocacy, guided by statistics, by evidence-based research, while at the same time being cognizant of the new normal. The new normal includes the challenges we're having, because running a business in Zimbabwe and you say power is making you not work, you become irrelevant. Running a business in Zimbabwe and being so scared of current uncertainty, you become irrelevant. Running a business in Zimbabwe and appearing like you can't survive the informality, you become irrelevant. So we had to live to the billing of all those headwinds which face business every day.
And which is, I've had interactions, and we've had interactions on the show with some senior government officials for the first time really this year. And the sense that I have is that, they're amenable to hear us as long as we approach them with, we make the case that we are making our submissions in good faith, that our interests are aligned. I always make the case that the formal sector, and government, our interests are aligned. If I would want to be paying millions of dollars in taxes, and if I'm paying millions of dollars in taxes, it means that the state is
beneficial.
We're both winning. And if I go bust, I'm not paying any taxes.
And there's a cost to the business, to the
and fiscal doesn't collect anything.
Indeed.
So I'm encouraged as well by those engagements, and I think the platforms like this conference are great to have them in a room with a whole bunch of business people arguing and expressing themselves. So I think it's a great thing, and we should have more of these kinds of engagements. From your interactions with your members, looking at, I think we've gone halfway through the year. What are the key issues that business is grappling with that are, that are going to determine whether 2024 is a good year or a bad year?
Yeah, if you look at the nature of the discussions at this particular Congress, they are quite informative and give you vent to the general feeling among the private sector. Chief among them, the issue of the informal sector. It had become a direct tax, contrary to the normal common perception that when it's informal sector, you can find a way to prevaricate or avoid it, which is not the case now. So you see a Chamber of Commerce who brought business together and said, it was 10 years ago to try to bring a topic of informality into a room. Everyone will look at you and say, have you run out of issues to discuss? But now
it's a big deal. Yeah.
But when you open your shop, the next guy doesn't want or is not interested in having the license. What he wants is just to grab the market from you without paying anything. You look at the levels of smuggling in this economy. You look at the level of corruption in this country. Because once corruption becomes quite pronounced as we have, it's also a sign of how a lot of can I say the eye of the government has been lost in the radar, and corruption will then breed. So we're looking at that. Then secondly, currency. You really can't measure the certainty or the stability of the currency over a 2-3 month period. We always argue and say, for you to have a picture of how currency is performing, minimum we need at least 8 to 12 months going forward.
For sure.
So for now, for Zimbabwe to sit, relax, rest on its laurels and argue that we have got stability, I think that would be like living in Honolulu. Which is not the case. So currency is another issue. Then a third, but quite worrisome issue, power. The cost and availability of power. Cost of power, you're looking at 14 cents per kilowatt hour on average. But on an availability, the intermittent and reliable phases, especially with the winter season, which business has been exposed to, with power outages averaging between 8 to 12 hours every 24 hours or every day. Those are the 3 issues I can say.
And do you see light at the end of the tunnel from the conversations and the panels and the presentations? Do you think that we've got a handle on all of those issues, and that, if we're here again this time next year, we'll be talking about different things?
Absolutely. We don't doubt that we'll find each other. It was challenges of power, challenges of currency. I think Zimbabwe in the last decade had attempted to have currency 3 times. And we can't afford to lose this one. If we are to lose it, then it will mark another height of abnormality, a height of acknowledging that we have to live with the US dollar possibly for the next generation, which is quite very sad and unsustainable by any trace of imagination, I would call it. Then power issue, I think, 1K788 is there, but the water levels in Kariba, which normally provides cheaper electricity.
Okay, because of the drought, we're in trouble.
Because of the El Nino-induced drought. So the outlook in the short to medium term is quite very gloomy when you look at the power generation within Zimbabwe and the surrounding regional countries such as Zambia and also Malawi. It is an issue. So if those issues, government continues listening, of which sometimes with no election like we are having, I don't know the business of government not taking possibly what we are offering, because there are no political interests which will threaten possibly their stay in power at the moment. And we want to believe they will give it an
So I'm an eternal optimist, and I want to end this on an optimistic note. If so, looking forward, the next 6, 12, 18 months, what are you most optimistic and excited about?
I think it's true that the ICT is an industry to watch, which then encompass what are considered resident risks, like the artificial intelligence. But ICT is a sector, is the new data, is the new mining sector in its own sense. When we used to talk of gold, diamond, now ICT is the new gold, I'll call it. Then outside that, obviously Zimbabwe will always have that potential for agro-processing. But with the El Nino-induced drought, I think in the short to medium term, the headwinds are so strong.
Yeah.
But going forward, I'm quite convinced that Zimbabwe will always find its way in terms of regaining on the agricultural front going forward. Then third, mining sector. Obviously, commodity prices have not been quite good. You saw nickel prices, to a certain extent, platinum prices have not been well, given their mix in terms of export receipts and employment creation through the companies which employ people. But going forward, I still believe also there will be a bullish.
They'll bounce back, and we'll be able to explain that.
We are worried on that.
Well, on that optimistic note, I'd like to say cheers. And thank you so much for having us.
Pleasure is mine all
and
the time.
yeah,
Cheers. Thank you very much, and thank you for gracing this ZNCC event.
it's been a pleasure working with you.
It's an event which was different. Your level of publicity, how you promoted it across the length and breadth of the nation and beyond. It's amazing. If you know people in Washington, people in London talking about what's happening at ZNCC, it's testimony of how Friday Drinks has also grown. And thank you very much.
No, appreciate the kind words. And on that wonderful note, I'd like to say goodbye to the audience, and we'll catch you from Harare in our studio in the next couple of weeks. Cheers.
Thank you.